Have you ever seen a Waffle Rock? There is one in Virginia, and it's on display. Waffle Rock in America is a real geology puzzle because of the amazing patterns formed on its surface. Called Waffle Rock because it looks like a waffle iron grid, the question is, how was it made? Is it natural or the imprint of some advanced technological device that has long ago eroded and left its emboss on this natural rock? The Army Corps of Engineers and geologists say it's a natural formation, period. End of story. Nothing to see here. However, the scientific explanations don't account for all the features present in the rock. Aside from the unusual ancient alien talk, many believe that the pattern is actually an early form of hieroglyphic or primitive writing, and that the rock is the result of Neolithic art by pre-Columbian peoples. The rock, on display at the West Virginia Outlook on Jennings-Randolph Lake, is but a small piece of the original rock. It was moved there to save the geologically significant piece of history from a dam project, likely in no small part because of pressure exerted by the original residents of Shaw, a town removed for the dam. Photographs of the whole rock show clearly the pattern or the structure of the pattern does not run all the way through the rock, but rather can only be seen on one side. Most agree the rock is at least 250 million years old. It's either a perfectly natural formation or the work of an old ancient civilization, or maybe even aliens. Located at an altitude of approximately 1,170 meters is the Backweg Valley Baalbek, and it's known to have been settled from at least 700 BC, with almost continual settlement of the tell under the Temple of Jupiter, which was a temple since the pre-Hellenistic era. However, some researchers, such as Graham Hancock, argue that its roots go back as far as 12,000 years. During the period of the Roman rule, Baalbek was known as Heliopolis and housed one of the largest and grandest sanctuaries in the empire. One of the most awe-inspiring features of Baalbek is the incredible megalithic foundations of the Temple of Jupiter. The temple was built on a platform of stones that are among the largest building blocks seen in the whole world. 27 of these enormous limestone blocks can be seen at its base, and 3 of them weighing about 1,000 tons each, known as the trilithon. How they were cut so finely and moved into place has defied explanation, particularly considering the blocks are known to have weighed over 1,000 tons. Many researchers, Graham Hancock included, reject the traditional explanation that the blocks are the work of the Romans. A visual study of the blocks clearly shows a difference in style and appearance between the large megalithic stones and the surrounding blocks used to build the temple. The gigantic blocks used in the foundations of the Temple of Jupiter are known to have come from a nearby quarry located about 2,600 feet from the temple. The limestone quarry houses 2 massive building blocks that never made it to the temple, one weighing about 1,240 tons, and the other, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighs about 1,000 tons. It's obvious these stones could not have been moved using the knowledge and technology of the era. Even today, with modern technology and modern machinery, they could not be moved easily. So why create monuments using these huge stones when smaller stones would have been simple? What technology did they use to move these stones, and how? Spheres found in the mines of South Africa have piqued the curiosity of researchers for decades. Why? Because they're 2.8 billion years old and appear to be man-made. According to Michael Cremo and other researchers of prehistoric culture, these spheres add to a body of evidence suggesting intelligent life existed on Earth long before a conventional view of history places it there. Cremo has traveled the world gathering information on out-of-place artifacts. He compiled his findings in the popular book Forbidden Archaeology: The Hidden History of the Human Race. In 1984, while investigating the spheres, he contacted Rolf Marx, curator of the Museum of Klerksdorp, South Africa, where some of the spheres are kept. Marx described the spheres as being about 2.8 billion years old, with a very hard surface and a fibrous structure inside. He found them quite strange and puzzling. Marx wrote, according to Cremo, "There is nothing scientific published about the globes, for the facts are they are found in Profilite, which is mined near the little town of Otsdale in the western Transvaal. Some of the so-called Klerksdorp spheres are elliptical in shape with rough edges around the center. But some are so balanced in shape and proportion, and the grooves around them look so straight and hand-carved, it seems unlikely they were naturally formed." Proponents of this theory say that the spheres were made by intelligent beings. Cremo and others who hold that these spheres are evidence of advanced prehistoric civilizations say mainstream science needs to be bolder and more willing to acknowledge evidence that could contradict dominant views. What was the purpose of the spheres, and who was manufacturing them 2.8 billion years ago? Dogu literally means earthen figure. They're small humanoid and animal figurines made during the latter part of the Jomon period, about 14,000 to 400 BC, of prehistoric Japan. Dogu come exclusively from the Jomon period and were no longer made in the periods thereafter. There are various styles of Dogu depending on the exhumation area and the time period. According to the National Museum of Japanese History, the total number found throughout Japan is approximately 15,000. Dogu were made across all of Japan except Okinawa. Most of the Dogu have been found in eastern Japan, and it's rare to find one in western Japan. The purpose of the Dogu remains unknown. Due in part to the enigmatic nature of the figurines, there have been numerous theories of the nature regarding their ornate appearance, with some speculating that the physical appearance is connected to the suits and equipment of modern-day astronauts. One proponent in particular, Eric von Daniken, has written how the Dogu has modern fastenings and eye apertures on its helmet, an attribution made as part of the final chapter of his 1968 publication, Chariots of the Gods. There are also disparities in the varieties of Dogu, with only a portion of the figures having the characteristic goggle-like eyes, which are most cited by ancient alien theorists. Were these depictions of ancient aliens, or simply fertility figurines? Why did they appear in only one period and then no longer seen? What was their purpose? Who did they represent? The Schist Disc is one of those unusual artifacts that defies explanation. It's been thought to be anything from an elaborate candle or incense holder to an impeller from some technological device. In January 1936, a strange disc was unearthed at the plateau edge of North Saqqara, approximately 1.7 kilometers north of Djoser's Step Pyramid in Egypt. The discovery of the mysterious prehistoric artifact that many considered as a device was made in the tomb of Prince Sabu around 3100 BC by a famous British Egyptologist, Walter Byron Emery. Sabu was the son of a high official or administrator of a town or province probably called Star of the family of Horus. The unearthed device, named the Schist Disc, is approximately 24 inches by 4.2 inches in the center. It was manufactured by unknown means, from very fragile and delicate material requiring very tedious carving, the production of which would confound any craftsman today. Now, many important questions arise. Scientists do not think the object is a wheel, because the wheel appeared in Egypt at 1500 BC during the 18th dynasty. If the Schist Disc is in fact a wheel, it would mean ancient Egyptians possessed knowledge of the wheel about 3000 BC during the time of the First Dynasty. This would require Egyptologists to rewrite some history books. If the Schist Disc is not a wheel nor modeled after the wheel, what is it? Some scientists suggest that the fragile nature of such an intricately carved stone object greatly limits its practical usage and suggests a purely ornamental function, being of a religious or some other ritualistic purpose. Of course, some believe this disc served another purpose, as a lamp. However, critics of the theory argue that the three-blade ceremonial lamp is hardly possible because of the shape and curvature of its petals, which seems to suggest a function, not just decoration. Egyptologist Cyril Aldrin reached the conclusion that, independently of what the object was used for or what it represented, its design was without a doubt a copy of a previous, more older, metallic object. Why did the ancient Egyptians bother to design an object with such a complex structure more than 5,000 years ago? How could a culture who typically used chisels to shape rock have mastered a technique to work such a delicate material into this extraordinary level? Obviously, the Schist Disc is an object that played an important role 5,000 years ago. Egyptologists offer a number of theories trying to explain what the disc was used for, but for the moment, no one has been able to explain the object's complex structure. The Schist Disc's futuristic design continues to baffle all those who have seen it. There is no doubt this particular object continues to constitute one of the most perplexing Egyptian and ancient mysteries, and we are left with several unanswered questions. You can examine the Schist Disc yourself, as it is currently in the Cairo Museum. In a mysterious pyramid in China's Qinghai province near Mount Baiyagong are three caves filled with pipes leading to a nearby saltwater lake. There are also pipes under the lake bed and on the shore. The iron pipes range in size from some smaller than a toothpick. The strangest part is that they may be 150,000 years old. Dating done by the Beijing Institute of Geology determined these iron pipes were smelted about 150,000 years ago, if they were indeed made by humans, according to Brian Dunning of Skeptoid.com. And if they were made by humans, history, as it is commonly viewed, would have to be reevaluated. The dating was done using thermoluminescence, a technique that determines how long ago crystalline mineral was exposed to sunlight or heated. Humans are only thought to have inhabited the region for the past 30,000 years. Even with the known history of the area, the only humans to inhabit the region were nomads, whose lifestyle would not leave any such structures behind. Though some have since tried to explain the pipes as a natural phenomenon, Yang Ji, a research fellow at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, told that the pyramid may have been built by intelligent beings. He did not dismiss the theory that ancient extraterrestrials may be responsible, saying this theory is understandable and worth looking into. But scientific means must be employed to prove whether or not it is true. Another theory is that it was built by prehistoric humans with techniques lost to humans of a latter period. The pipes lead into a salty lake, though a twin lake nearby contains fresh water. The surrounding landscape is strewn with what he describes as strangely shaped stones. Rocks protrude from the ground like broken pillars. Who could have built a pipe system 150,000 years ago? These are iron pipes, not clay or rock. They would have had to have been constructed. No one was smelting iron that long ago, according to our current understanding of history. Is it possible that an ancient race of people lived long before our so-called historical timeline? If so, what other artifacts exist that prove their existence? Today, there is an artifact you can clearly see yourself. It's in Antarctica, and some say it depicts the face of an alien. With Google Earth, you can see and zoom in on the face easily. Instagrammer UFO Scandinavia located what many believe to be a massive alien face on the White Continent using Google Maps. It's indeed there. Is this Paradia or an ancient monument of an alien race? Study these images or view them for yourself on Google Earth. Perhaps the most famous and enigmatic crystal skull was allegedly discovered in 1924 by Anna Mitchell Hedges, adopted daughter of British adventurer and popular author F.A. Mitchell Hedges. Mitchell Hedges claimed that she found the skull buried under a collapsed altar inside a temple in Louboutin in British Honduras, now Belize. The skull is made from a block of clear crystal about the size of a human cranium. The lower jaw is detached. In the early 1970s, it came under the temporary care of freelance art restorer Frank Dorlin, who claimed upon inspecting it that it had been carved with total disregard to the natural crystal axis and without the use of metal tools. Dorlin reported being unable to find any telltale scratch marks except for traces of mechanical grinding on the teeth, and he speculated that it was first chiseled into rough form, probably using diamonds, and the finer shaping. Grinding and polishing was accomplished through the use of sand over a period of 150 to 300 years. He said it could be up to 12,000 years old. The skull was examined at Hewlett-Packard's Crystal Laboratories in Santa Clara, California, where it was subjected to several tests. The labs determined only that it was not a composite as Dorland had supposed, but that it was fashioned from a single crystal of quartz. They also established that the lower jaw had been fashioned from the same left-handed growing crystal as the rest of the skull. No investigation was made by Hewlett-Packard as to its method of manufacturing or dating. As well as traces of mechanical grinding on the teeth noted by Dorland, Mayanist archaeologist Norman Hammond reported that the holes, presumed to be intended for support pegs, showed signs of being made by drilling with metal. Anna Mitchell Hedges refused subsequent requests to submit the skull for further scientific testing. The earliest published reference to the skull is in the July 1936 issue of the British anthropological journal Man, where it is described as being in the possession of Sidney Burney, a London art dealer who is said to have owned it since 1933. No mention was made of Mitchell Hedges. F.A. Mitchell Hedges mentioned the skull only briefly in the first edition of his autobiography. He claimed that it is at least 3,600 years old, and according to legend it was used by the high priest of the Maya when he was performing esoteric rites. It is said that when he willed death with the help of the skull, death invariably followed. In a 1970 letter, Anna also stated that she was told by the few remaining Maya that the skull was used by the high priest to will death. For this reason, the artifact is sometimes referred to as the Skull of Doom. Anna Mitchell Hedges toured with the skull from 1967, exhibiting it on a pay-per-view basis. She continued to grant interviews about the artifact until her death. In her last 8 years, Anna Mitchell Hedges lived in Chesterton, Indiana, with Bill Horman, whom she married in 2002. She died on April 11, 2007. Since that time, the Mitchell Hedges skull has been owned by Horman. He continues to believe in its mythical properties. Who made this skull? How was it made? And for what purpose? To date, no one is absolutely sure. The temple grounds of Pumapunku are believed to date back to between 536 and 600 AD, constructed by a civilization appearing to have been wiped out by a cataclysmic event. Pumapunku is part of the larger, well-known Tiwanaku site, an important location to the Incas, who believe it is the cradle of their civilization. Characteristics ancient alien theorists might consider significant as well. This area is marked by a decorated megalithic archway known as the Gate of the Sun, and according to Freddie Sylvia, it may be one of the oldest temples. Once home to somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 people, the name itself translates to navel at the center, implying it once served as a cultural hub. Atop the Gate of the Sun is a carving, the supreme god of the Incas. Sylvia says the Viracocha and his ilk were described as being much different than the indigenous Incas. They were white-skinned, bearded, fair-headed, and capable of bending the laws of nature. They were also significantly taller. And these weren't descriptions of the conquistadors. They didn't come along for about another century. The reports of Viracocha's superhuman race make the anomalous stonework at Pumapunku all the more interesting. Perfect 90-degree angles, precision cuts, and immaculately even spacing in the stones were shocking. considering the primitive epoch in which they were made. Much of this craft stonework remains distinct to this day, confounding scientists and archaeologists alike. Earth is probably the last place you'd look for extraterrestrials, especially with all the new exoplanet discoveries and the endless quest to prove there was life on Mars at least once in the past, something billion years ago. But are we looking too far? Some scientists are less out there and more down to earth, literally, when it comes to finding traces of alien life forms. Not that these hypothetical aliens are actually crawling around our planet. What these scientists argue is that they may have dropped by before humans even existed and left behind technosignatures, such as radios, rockets, or other tech that might have been lying deep underground or floating around in space for eons. Astrophysicist John Wright has elicited more than a few eye rolls with a controversial argument that was recently published in the International Journal of Astrobiology. He believes that technosignatures from an alien species that landed not just on Earth or the Moon, but even Mars before its atmosphere was obliterated, or Venus before it became a swirl of toxic clouds, could have possibly survived somewhere. While Venusian clouds and volcanoes would have long since eroded and liquefied any shred of evidence, he still believes it is possible something could be buried on Earth, Mars, or the Moon if it hadn't long ago become space junk. If a prior technological, perhaps spacefaring species ever arose in the solar system, it might have produced artifacts or other technosignatures that have survived to present day. Meaning solar system artifacts provides a potential path to resolving an astrobiology question. Wright doesn't believe aliens actually lived on Earth, and even if they had, erosion and ever-shifting land masses would have turned any trace of them to dust. Hypothetical alien trash would have had a much better chance of surviving in the subsurface of Mars, away from the solar winds and radiation it constantly gets blasted with, and too deep to be smashed by meteorite impacts. The red planet also has no plate tectonics to crush any ancient computers or whatever they might have scattered around. Other scientists are more skeptical, possibly because we haven't yet found any prehistoric ray guns or radio transmitters next to a T-Rex skeleton. Astronomy professor Ivi Leob believes that there could have been a visit from other civilizations on Earth. The search for extraterrestrial artifacts is more likely to find technosignatures in space, though, however, unlikely that still is. The most effective way to zoom in on something unusual would be a sky survey. Whether we'd actually recognize something as alien, even if we saw it, is an entirely different thought to keep both scientists up at night. Supporters of the drive to find extraterrestrial artifacts are already peering deep into space in a bid to discover cities, satellite networks, or gigantic megastructures. Some even think our own solar system could contain probes sent by an advanced civilization, wreckage from old spaceships, or even evidence of ancient settlements on planets like Mars or Venus. Yet other experts slam this headline, grabbing easily sensationalized discipline as entertainment science, and question whether there's any point looking for such tiny needles in the mega haystack of our breathtakingly gigantic universe. Avi Loeb, chair of the Harvard University Astronomy Department, is among the world's most respected astrophysicists. He stunned the scientific community by refusing to rule out the possibility that a strange cigar-shaped object which sped through our solar system may have been alien in origin. Astronomers named the space rock Oumuamua, Hawaiian for scout, and said it was an interstellar visitor which formed in another star system before traveling here through the void of deep space. He did not simply dismiss the idea that it was built by an extraterrestrial civilization and suggested it could have been a light cell craft, calling on his fellow scientists to keep an open mind about its origins. What sort of alien technology are astronomers searching for right now? Well, examples include artificial light, industrial pollution, or reflection of starlight from solar cells on the surface of planets around other stars, megastructures, or fleets of satellites. Space archaeology with our best telescopes might reveal technological equipment floating in space, similar to the 2 Voyager probes that we launched and are now leaving the solar system. But we should keep in mind that the travel time is very long between stars. It would take the Voyagers about 100,000 years to reach the nearest stars to our Sun. The equipment could therefore be defunct if it belongs to a civilization that died by now. The artifacts we're most likely to find include the defunct debris of highly sophisticated technologies, which could be the wreckage of alien spaceships. Perhaps our best way to put our hands on them is to find objects that collide with Earth and survive as meteorites.